You want to know why we have this weird primary process and how it got so weird? Well, it's because party elites think voters are too stupid and crazy to choose their own candidates, and they keep finding super annoying ways to weasel out of progressive reforms that give power to regular people. Let me explain. In the beginning of the United States, voters had absolutely no say over who their party's presidential candidate would be. Party bosses had closed-door party conventions where they argued and smoked cigars and stroked each other off until they decided on the candidate who would best serve their own political agenda. This democratic process was not at all, democratic. Progressives eventually destroyed this system. And I mean like actual capital P progressives from the progressive era where you could make these things. You're not familiar with them now, but they're called huge systemic changes that benefit regular human people, like workplace safety standards and unions and, yes, primaries. In 1912, some states started allowing parties to hold primary elections, and everyone would see who the people in that state wanted as their party's candidate. It felt cool. But the problem was, it didn't really mean anything. The results of those primaries were not binding, and they were jokingly called, quote, beauty contests. Basically, all the party leader had to do was take the result under advisement and then go pick the person that they were best friends with. And this era lasted until 1968, when all hell broke loose at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. After a primary process that saw LBJ drop out and RFK get assassinated, the party leaders decided it was the best idea to choose Hubert Humphrey as their nominee. And the funny thing about Hubert Humphrey is he did not win a single primary that year. As a result, there were riots, and when the dust settled, a commission made new rules saying no more smoke-filled rooms. The process has to be transparent. Primary results are now binding. Haha, gotcha. Now, Democratic Party leaders hated losing all their power to dumb, stupid human voters. So they came up with the most ridiculous concept in their sad and desperate attempt to stifle the will of their party members. And in 1980, they invented the Superdelegate. What is a superdelegate? Well, a superdelegate is a party elite who could support any candidate they wanted, regardless of how the primaries went. They were essentially the party bosses of the days gone by. And they pretty much always supported the establishment candidate, even if that candidate was losing in the state-by-state votes. Now, how does this play out? Well, in 2016, Bernie Sanders outperformed Hillary Clinton in New Hampshire and Iowa. So the scoreboard on all the news broadcasts should have read Sanders leading 36-32 among pledged delegates. Sanders in the lead. But the news included these rando shady superdelegates in their count instead. And by that count, Clinton was up 481-55 according to the AP count. Bernie had won more support of the people, but it looked like Hillary was kicking his ass. And in an environment where perception is so important and determines, to a large extent, reality, Sanders supporters got discouraged, and this alone may have lost him the momentum he deserved. Now, after Hillary lost to Trump in the general election that year, progressives pressured the party bosses into drastically reducing the role of superdelegates. Now, is that all fixed? Not by a long shot. In the 2020 election, the new system was in place, and Bernie Sanders had just won New Hampshire and Nevada. And the party leaders got scared. There were no smoke-filled rooms or superdelegates to save them from the unbridled will of the people, who might pick a progressive candidate, oh God. But there was Jim Clyburn, a key ally in South Carolina who endorsed Joe Biden. He won the state and everyone rallied around him, essentially securing the nomination for Biden, and in turn, protecting the establishment. So guess what they did in 2024? They said, screw Nevada, screw New Hampshire, and screw Iowa. South Carolina's first, baby. Establishment all the way. So first with closed-door conventions, then with essentially sham primaries, then with superdelegates, and now with the complete rework of a decades-old voting calendar, Party bosses are constantly trying to silence the voice of progressive voters because they think you are too stupid and too crazy to be trusted with a thing called a vote. Even though primary voters are the most invested personally in the process and theoretically care more.